Well, let's then move on to just some reviews of the actual phase one itself, right? So let's talk about some most impressive teams. Give me a Liga MX and give me an MLS team that you were like, good showing, friends.
So I will say Liga MX is pretty easy. Um, I'm gonna go with Puebla. I think that's the easy choice for Liga MX, considering in their league they have been dreadful this season, including a 7-0 stomping yesterday against Tigres. However, they still managed to get their way out of the Liga MX group and are in the knockout stages, which is miraculous considering the level of quality that is on the Liga MX side. They just seem to really know how to play against MLS sides, it appears. From the MLS sides as well, there's another very obvious one. I don't feel like I should take both obvious ones from you, so I
No, go
will. I
ahead,
will do.
because I knew you were going to do this, so I went less obvious. So go on.
Okay. I will take the Galaxy then. The Galaxy was a very big surprise in this tournament. I do feel like they've been turning things in a better direction. Granted, it really couldn't have gotten much worse than where it once was I remember when we previously had talked about them. However, this was definitely way above what I think a lot of people had expected performance-wise out of them. 10 goals scored, a +7 goal differential, 7 points on the bounce with two wins and a PK loss. Very much feels reminiscent of last year Galaxy. It almost feels like they found a little footing again.
Yeah, so like I said, I knew you were going to go easy, so let me go with my focus. And the first one I'm going to go with is FC Juarez. So we both had Juarez relatively low in our standings for the group, right? I think you had them finishing dead last in the group, and I had them in fourth. And it was with just cause, right? They're bottom of the table in Liga MX Apertura. They had a decent Clausura season last season, but they hadn't finished in the top half of Liga MX in any half season except for the 2020 shortened Clausura. They're just historically not good. And they went undefeated in Leagues Cup with a PK win, a PK loss, and a regular win. And had they won on PKs in the last game against Red Bull, they would have moved on. And actually, it was funny because the Red Bull comment sections were filled with Pueblo fans going, "Thank you so much. Thank you for knocking them out, so we could move on. You're the best. You're the best. You're the best." And I thought that was really funny because it shows, oh, maybe some people still actually do care about this, which is funny. But I thought it was a really good showing from them, and even though they didn't get all the way through, it can give them good momentum moving forward, right? With MLS, I got to go with my boys. Red Bull, baby. A team that played mostly rotated 11s and youth players came into the tournament with some people were saying low expectations. I don't know. But they were in a group against Monterrey, Chivas, and Juarez, and many of us expected, mainly you. You were a hater. You were a doubter. They
Which
you,
I
they
was correct
expected
on, by the
them
way, because they did not make it out. So the doubting was correct.
relax. The They expected them to continue their form going into the tournament, right? Being defensively poor, lackluster in the attack, losing games that they shouldn't, and outside of, they figured out some of it, right? Defensively, we looked great for the first time in a long time, which is a really big one. Um, Attacking was still kind of worrying. We still haven't quite figured that part out yet, but had we won the PK shootout against Monterrey, we are in, we're still not moving on. We're in the conversation to have a bigger shot at moving on, I guess is for a better term, right? So instead of saying, oh, we need to win the game by 3 goals, we just need to win in penalties and maybe we move on, right? Or something like that, whatever the thing would have ended up being. Listen, I said on Twitter after the tournament that Red Bull came in, they went without a loss in regulation. They figured it out defensively, and they rested some of their key players for a very critical part of the year coming up. This big push to the playoffs as we sit on the outside looking in. This might have been the best case scenario for them if they weren't going to move on. Play well, rest your stars, get some confidence, get back into MLS and run the table. I'm very happy with the way it came out.
I think that's a stretch, but that's to each their own.
Luckily, nobody asked you what you think. But
Well, you
what
ask
I
me all
am
the
going to
time.
ask, but what I am going to ask you is, who are your least impressive teams from Phase One? I got a couple, so we're only going to go one on one still, but I got a couple.
I wish I could make the argument for Red Bull.
You
I
couldn't.
won't call them most impressive, but I can't really say least. Monterrey is one that jumps out to me for Liga MX. I mean, that is a team where we previewed them was like we went you could go through the roster and you'd be like, "Oh, I remember this guy. Oh, I know this guy. Like I remember this guy from like FIFA or Europe, like, a good player." Um, because if you remember them from FIFA, automatically a good player.
Sure.
A lot of big names in
Eurostar.
that team, and they couldn't even get a regular time win in any of their games, which is shocking. I really thought they would have performed better. And it's not like they're necessarily terrible in the league right now. I mean, obviously it's still very early days, but they're sitting fourth. So it's not like they're wildly out of form, sitting in, 16th in the league right now with like one win. Like they're doing fine. And it seemed like they played relatively strong lineups too. It wasn't like they fully rotated this team and they just couldn't get results, which was very surprising to see. Normally they're a threat when it comes to any competition involving MLS and Liga MX. San Diego is the other obvious one. Maybe it's I would have to look into whether or not they actually put out starting lineups. But looking at the results compared to how they've done so far in the season versus how they did in Leagues Cup was definitely surprising to see them struggle a bit here. I mean, for the most part, it looks like they played pretty. I wouldn't be able to fully tell, but it looks like, I mean, there are players that like are usual starters that are in there, but it looks like there's some rotations, and maybe that explains why they struggled. They also had a very tough schedule.
Mhm.
Pachuca and Tigres in there is tough, but um, based on what I had expectations wise for them at the start, I did think they would be a little bit better, especially considering I believe all those games were played in San Diego too, so that should have been a little bit of a benefit for them.
Mhm. Yeah, Liga MX, I'm matching with you, Monterrey. What happened? Where's the clip, right? Where's the meme? Going into this with a relatively easy group, right? You had out of form Red Bull, out of form Charlotte, and FCC. This should have been 7 points, right? It should at least. And they leave without a win in regulation, a PK shootout win against you boys, and two regulation losses, right? The first two matches had full strength or close to it, right? And that's one of the things I was gonna when I almost jumped in on you. That's what I was gonna say is no, they played as strong a lineup as you'd like, and they semi-rotated for the third match once they were out. But for a group with this much attacking talent, right? Oliver Torres, Sergio Canales, Lucas Ocampos, Jesus Corona, Herman Bertarame. I mean, like you pick of the litter here, and this was bad. It was a bad showing for them, and I'm sure they're going to go back and say, "Oh, we didn't care about this anyway." Blah 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 blah. We don't care until we can play, and they're gonna save face. But at the end of the day, it was a bad showing. Then in MLS, I almost went with San Diego as well, but I count them as a team that rotated pretty heavily from the opening whistle. They did not take this as seriously as they wanted because, for those of you who don't know, they're currently top of the West right now, and they've got a bit more to worry about than this, I think. And I ended up going with Houston, right? Three Liga MX sides walked away with 0 points. No wins at all. Only one MLS team did. And that, my friends, is Benny Ball Houston Dynamo. The reason I picked them is because while other teams rotated and tried things and succeeded or tried things and it just didn't quite work out, Houston still, to me, feels like they have no idea what they're doing. They had a tough group, right? I think looking at the group, you can't think that we expected them to get out. But they went with three completely different center back pairings each game, a different striker every time. I mean, playing players in there. And again, I'll put my hand up. Maybe this is just Houston. Maybe this is Benny Ball Houston to a T. I don't watch Houston. I probably should, but why? Right? I don't need my eyes to bleed every weekend. They did a different. They go with a 4-2-3-1. That three pack varied every single game. They just didn't have any idea where they were going with this. And even if you knew you weren't going to get out, it's almost like, Red Bull knew they weren't, I'm assuming Red Bull didn't care if they got out or whatever. Julian Hall started every game. They knew who they wanted to see and what they wanted to see out of them. And they gave him the opportunity every single game. Here it was like, well, this one didn't work, so let's try this, or let's try this, or let's try this. Right. And one of the things I was thinking about as we talk about this tournament is how big a bad performance could lead to confidence in the last part of this MLS season. There's 10 games left. Houston currently sit 3 points out of the playoffs, and they get outscored 8-2 in this tournament. They have no idea what they're doing, and it very well could be crushing for their move to the, I guess the last push, right? The playoff push. And I think that's why it was the worst for me because I mean, gosh, if you come out of this and say, "Oh, we lost 1-0 to Tigres. We kept it close in another game, lost in a shootout, and we won a shootout, right? Or performed well." They got blown out the water, and it's like, man, what are you like? That's not great.
I mean, not that I'm trying to run defense here for Houston, and I do agree with you. The one thing that I would give them a little benefit on is the fact that they definitely had a harder schedule than a lot of other teams. They had that
Sure.
same schedule that San Diego had, where you're playing Tigres, Pachuca, and Mazatlan, right?
Did they
And
both come out of that group?
what happened?
They both came out of that group? I didn't even
I
know.
believe so. It looked like it.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they
Yeah,
did.
and it speaks to the fact that both Tigres and Pachuca moved on. Um,
Yeah, fair too.
but yeah, I think you still would expect them to get a result out of Mazatlan, which they didn't. So I agree with you. It's definitely disappointing and probably a trend, a poor trend heading into the rest of the season.
Yeah, and for me, like I said, it's less about the result, like, oh yeah, you didn't pick up a win, whatever. But it's the way they got their results. I mean, they weren't competitive at all. They didn't seem to generate much going forward. Again, I didn't watch a ton of them, and I could probably go back and check the stats, but it just felt like there was not an idea what was going on. And um, with you sitting right outside the playoffs, needing to make a push right now, feels like it could have been a better opportunity to be better there.